Today, a political squabble over the surplus erupted in the House. The Conservatives tabled an Opposition Day motion that says that the previous government, so them, that they left Canada $1 billion in the black in surplus. Is the Liberal government right to turn that surplus into deficit in the upcoming budget? Is now the time to save or to spend in order to stimulate the economy, as we were just talking about? And was the Conservative move a bid to try and shape fiscal policy or just play politics? Joining me now from the foyer of the House of Commons, François-Philippe Champagne is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Lisa Raitt is the Conservative Finance Critic. And Guy Caron is the NDP Finance Critic. Nice to see everybody. Appreciate you being here. Lisa Raitt, I'm going to start with you because it's your motion. And you're trying to, I guess, draw some attention to the November 2015 fiscal monitor that says that there's a predicted $1 billion surplus.
Right.
What's the point you're trying to make here for Canadians?
The point is this, is that when the government came out in November to talk about the economic forecast and the update, they had made an assumption that we were actually going to be in deficit when they were the ones taking over on November 4. And guess what? As I said at the time, numbers don't lie. And it shows clearly in this last fiscal monitor, indeed, on November 4, when they took the keys to the House, there was $1 billion surplus. I think that's important, Rosemary, from 2 points of view. One is the legacy, so that we know that we did what we needed to do to come back from deficit to a balanced budget. And the second one is to give a clear indication to Canadians that going forward, it's the decisions of this government that brings them back into a deficit, no matter how large it is. And it's not the responsibility of the former Conservative government, because we gave them a clean slate.
Okay, but I mean, a couple of things. First of all, this fiscal monitor is just a snapshot, right, of what happened at a particular time. It doesn't give you the sense of what's going to unfold, and we see what's happening in the economy right now.
Right, and so
but that's the point, Rosemary. That's a sideshow.
Well, hang on.
That's what the Conservative are doing, a sideshow.
Okay, hang on. Let me get back to Lisa Raitt, and then you can jump in. I promise.
She's going to push on me first.
But my issue is this: is that this government promised deficit. So I'm not really sure what the point is, given that they promised that they were going to go into deficit to finance certain things. So
sure.
What are you trying to get at?
So they know what they said they were going to spend. They promised a $10 billion deficit. I get that, but they start off the whole push on spending and deficits by saying that they were left a bad position by us. Fundamentally incorrect. You say it's a snapshot in time, but it's accumulation of what has happened the past 8 months that show there was a surplus. If we were handed forecasts going into the future as they were, we would have made decisions to keep and maintain a balanced budget. They're not. They're going to continue down the road of spending more and more and more.
How would you possibly have done that, though, given the...
we've done it in the past.
Well, you've done deficits in a row. They know how to do deficits.
Given the situation right now, Lisa Raitt, you still think that you would have bring in a balanced budget?
I would tell you that we'd be making decisions about deferral of costs, deferral of expenses, talking about what we could do to grow the economy in a quick manner to make sure that we could keep it at a balanced budget. At least we try, Rosemary. At least we talk about the need to ensure that the economy would be doing well and that we would maintain a balanced budget. And if not, we tell Canadians, regretfully, we have to go into deficit, but we would try.
Okay, François-Philippe, it's finally your turn here.
No, I was just saying, this is a sideshow. You know, as we know, we decided to do politics differently. On the 19th of October, we decided to be transparent and open with Canadians. In November, we did say to Canadians that we're going to run a deficit. What they're doing is looking at the snapshot in the year and trying to make Canadians believe that they leave us with a surplus. Canadians know better. We know that we're going to have a deficit this year. It's because the actions and inactions of the government before. What we've done, Rosemary, is very clear, is to be transparent.
Now, to be fair, François-Philippe, Mr. Champagne, you were going to have a deficit regardless, because that's what you committed to doing. What the finance minister said in his fiscal update was that it would be $3 billion more. Is part of that reason not because the tax cuts that you promised turned out not to be revenue neutral after all?
No, I mean, what we were elected, Rosemary, was on an agenda of growth. And that's what we started to do in December. We reduced tax for the middle class. We're going to continue in our next budget to invest. I've been from Moncton to Yellowknife, listening to Canadians from coast to coast. People wanted to invest in infrastructure and productivity.
I get all that. I get all that.
That's what Canadians expect us to do, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing.
Okay, but I guess, you could say that you're setting the stage for telling Canadians very soon that you're going to be I don't know, $20 billion in deficit because of the way the Conservatives left you. So that's not what you're trying to set up here.
That's not what we're saying. We're just saying the motion, as you said, was just a sideshow. Actually, would have been far more productive to try to talk about looking forward, like we've done in our pre-budget consultation, listening to Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Today, what the Conservatives have been trying to do is to convince Canadians they left us with their surplus. People know better. So we debated today. We told them what in November, the Minister of Finance was very clear, was prudent, transparent. We say to Canadians, we're going to run a deficit. And like you said, on October, we were elected on a platform where we said we're going to make modest deficit to invest in growth. Canadians know that when interests are low, that's the time to invest.
Yeah, except I guess my point is, if you can now say that the Conservatives left you with $3 billion deficit and say that and then say, well, we were elected on a promise for modest deficits, $10 billion, it's going to be much easier to say to Canadians, oh, sorry, it turns out it's $20 billion. You see what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, I know, but we're talking about the motion today. What I'm saying is that this is not what we're saying. What we're saying is that today what they were trying to do was a sideshow, and Canadians know better.
Well, I get what the motion was. I get the political interest in the motion. The conversation is still an important one.
But totally. That's why we went across the country and we consulted Canadians about the agenda they want to invest in growth. That's exactly what we're going to be doing.
Okay, Guy Caron, let me hear you on this. Is this a political sideshow? Is this something that you have concerns about? Give me your take on this.
Well, I think you highlighted the absurd the day it is right now. The motion in itself will vote for it because the motion says that the fiscal monitor is saying that there is $1 billion surplus at the end of November 2015, which is what it says. I wanted to be mischievous and propose an amendment saying also that the sun is yellow, the grass is green, and the sky is blue.
Friendly amendment.
You cannot disagree with that.
You see how serious that motion was.
Okay, Mr. Caron's turn.
It's giving us the opportunity of bringing back people in the past when the budget was actually tabled back in 2015, and to highlight the fact that this billion surplus that's actually in the fiscal monitor, and we don't know if it will be the case at the end of the fiscal year, is actually largely due to the sale of the GM shares.
Yes.
The 3.3 billion, and it's actually acknowledged in the fiscal monitor. This sale was at a loss. It was actually, if you're looking at the analysts on Bay Street, only 2 analysts out of 24 actually said at the time that it was the time to sell, and 14 said it's actually the time to buy. So it was ill-advised and only for political motives. And the motion today is a bit absurd in that sense, but it gives us a chance to actually bring this point.
So let's pull back away from the motion today, because we can fight about what the numbers mean and whether this paints an accurate picture of things right now. Let's go back to you, Mr. Champagne. How do you reassure Canadians that the budget to come will not create what everyone fears, and that's structural deficits? At what point does the government say, this is too far to be in deficit, we're not going to go further?
No, but in the campaign, we were clear with Canadians that would run a modest deficit to invest in growth. And that's what Canadians have been telling us.
What does modest mean, though, at this stage?
Well, we're going to continue to reduce our debt to GDP ratio. We're going to be fiscally prudent when we invest, and we're going to return to a balanced budget by the end of our term. That's what we said. That's what we're going to do. But what Canadians want us to do now, Rosemary, we listen to them. I met hundreds of Canadians from coast to coast to coast. They say, invest in growth, invest in the middle class, invest in infrastructure, do smart investment. That's how you kickstart the economy. The Conservatives have the worst record of growth in this country. They left this nation with $150 billion of additional debt. On the 19th of October, people wanted things to be different. That's what we're proposing.
Okay, Lisa Raitt, your thoughts on how at what point does the government say this is too far? Again, I'm not sure an answer was there. I don't know what a modest deficit is at this stage.
So they said 10. Numbers are creeping up, but what we do have is some information from some polling that was done most recently by Navigator that talked to Canadians about how much is too much in terms of confidence in the government on deficit. When you start getting up into the 20 and 30 billion, the level of comfort for Canadians does drop. And the reason why is this. The parliamentary secretary said something very true, which is their fundamental promise to Canadians. We will run a deficit, however, we will return to balance at the end of the time. The higher that deficit gets in the first year, the more unlikely it is that they will actually be able to attain that second promise, which is the ones that Canadians.
Well, unless they manage to stimulate growth and really, change the
size of the Canadian economy is about $2 trillion. 1% is $20 billion in the economy.
Is what this polling shows. Canadians do have a discomfort with high levels of deficits for whatever reason. I think it's because they want to go back to balance in the future.
I just raised the point in the House during my speech is the fact that if you're looking at the fiscal framework that the Liberals presented during the election. It talked about an accumulated deficit of $25 billion over 4 years, with a return to balanced budget the last year. Now, if you take that fiscal framework and you're comparing it or adding the numbers that we have from the parliamentary budget director last December, now what we're talking about is an accumulated deficit of $55 billion over 4 years, with $11 billion deficit the last year. So the situation is completely changed right now, and I think the Liberals really have their work cut out for them. The next budget will be crucial because Canadians voted for them on change, but it has to be responsible change as well, and we certainly hope that those investments will be the right ones.
I just want to do one round, if I can, from everybody on the one thing that the Prime Minister could do to help Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, whoever else is being affected by the low price of oil. He's out there today. Mr. Champagne, what's the one thing the Prime Minister could do, is going to do to help people out there?
Well, the first thing he did is to go and meet the Premier to engage in a collaborative way in how we can help Alberta. So he talks about job creation, he talks about growth, green growth in the province.
I'm not sure someone who's on employment insurance really cares that they had a meeting.
Yeah, no, but I think the fact that the Prime Minister went there to talk with the Premier, you know, we care about the economy of Alberta. We know what's going on there. There was also a request from the government of Alberta through the Stabilization Fund of $250 million. We're going to look at that expeditiously. And I would say the fact that the Prime Minister was there talking with the Premier is a way to look at the situation, make sure we do the right investment. We understand what's going on in Alberta, and we're there to help.
Okay, Lisa Raitt, the one thing you'd like to see from the Prime Minister to help these parts of the country?
So less symbolism and more action. Albertans told us when we were out there that, quite frankly, it's not about giving them money, it's about giving them hope that their industry is going to get back on its feet, support their industry, get them the tools they need to rebuild it. That includes pipelines.
Guy Caron?
Greater accessibility to employment insurance. This is what you can do right now to actually help them. We're seeing the growing numbers of unemployed people in Alberta, and certainly that we're hoping that the situation will turn around so that they will get a job. But in the meantime, what they need is greater accessibility to EI, and unfortunately the program has been made less accessible in the previous years.
Okay, we got to leave it there. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. François-Philippe Champagne, Lisa Raitt, and Guy Caron.